Believe it or not, but in the not-so-distant future, Earth will experience a devastating event. The ecosystem will be severely damaged, and the survival of humanity will be in serious jeopardy. Not long after the accident, only the North and South poles were still unpolluted. The survivors gathered and left in an orderly fashion. The maturation of aviation technology helped humanity find a way to survive in the apocalypse, but many of them could only flee to shelters to hide. But among these people, there was an old man named Otis who stubbornly refused to leave. He thought it didn't matter where he died, so he stayed at the observatory to do something meaningful in his limited life. Otis was a retired astronomer who had always searched for hope for humanity. He once said that the K-3 satellite was very suitable for human habitation. It was very close to Jupiter, and its quality and other factors were quite similar to Earth. In his youth, his talent helped him meet his beautiful wife. But because he was too focused on his career, he lost everything good. He lived his whole life without knowing what his daughter looked like. All that was left beside him was loneliness and a broken body. To avoid affecting his work, he had to undergo dialysis and physical therapy every day, waking up from a beautiful dream. Otis checked the systems as usual. By now, it had been 3 weeks since the accident, and he had accidentally discovered a spaceship named Ether that would return to Earth in 12 hours. It was a coincidence that the planet that this Ether spaceship was exploring was the K-23 satellite. The spaceship had launched 4 years ago, so the astronauts didn't know what had happened. As one of the hopes for humanity's future, Otis quickly wanted to contact the spaceship, but no matter what he did, he couldn't contact the distant K-3 satellite. This place was a completely different landscape. If Earth was a lush green, K-23 was a fiery red. The vegetation was mostly shades of red, and the sky was a blazing orange. Here, they could get close enough to see the beauty of Jupiter. Astronaut Sally took pictures of the site. She had planned to call Earth to report the good news, but she then realized that the signal had been cut off. Before she could realize it, the Ether spaceship had veered off course without precise guidance. The astronauts could only navigate by feel. They used the ship's current position to recalculate their return route. Little did they know, this decision almost cost one of their lives. Back on Earth, Otis was still trying to contact the spaceship when he couldn't get through. He got up and went to eat, but then he suddenly noticed that there was another identical bowl of food on the table. Otis was puzzled. He wondered if he was losing his mind. He ended up just mixing the two bowls together. In the middle of the night, the observatory alarm went off. The kitchen suddenly caught fire, and Otis had a hard time putting it out. He then discovered a little girl hiding there. Unable to contact the shelter, he had to keep her for the time being. The little girl was well-behaved and understanding, but she didn't speak. She must have gotten lost during the evacuation. Having someone else around made Otis's lonely life a little less dull. The little girl was smart and lively, and Otis liked her very much. Unfortunately, their happy time didn't last long. The global environment began to deteriorate again. Soon, it covered the entire Arctic. Realizing that the observatory was in danger and unable to contact the Ether spaceship, Otis decided to leave. He would go to the weather station a few hundred kilometers away. The signal and air would be much better there than at the observatory. This journey was sure to be incredibly dangerous, but the two of them had no other way out. After packing their things and putting on their oxygen masks, an old man and a little girl started their motorbike on their way. On their long journey, they came across a crashed plane. The pilot's body had been eaten by wild wolves. Otis stepped into the cabin with his gun, only to be surprised to find that someone was still alive but badly injured. He didn't think the man would last much longer. The man couldn't speak normally, so he whispered to Otis about the situation outside. Finally, he asked Otis to let him die peacefully. The two of them continued on their way. They stopped for the night along the way. The next day, they were surprised to encounter a storm. Luckily, there was a rest stop nearby where they could rest, but Otis never expected the ground temperature to rise so quickly. When he woke up, the rest stop had already been submerged, standing on the brink of life and death. Otis used his gun to break the window. He then rescued the little girl, but it was too late to go back for his things. The ice quickly cracked, and Otis tried to drive the motorbike away, but he got stuck in the ice, and both of them fell into the sea. His dialysis machine was still up there, and Otis swam for his life, but the motorbike sank too quickly, and he had no choice but to save himself. He got back to shore, changed his clothes, and continued on his way with the little girl. All of their belongings had fallen into the sea, and he had to quickly get the little girl to the weather station before he died. But then bad luck struck again. They were already moving slowly, and then they encountered a pack of wolves. Otis tried to fight back with his gun, but he was seriously injured. The wind and snow quickly knocked him down, and he lost the little girl. Otis was about to give up when he saw a beam of light in the blizzard. It seemed like he had vaguely seen his wife. But when he looked closely, it turned out to be the little girl. The two of them hugged each other tightly. Finally, they had overcome this challenge as the sun was setting. The two of them finally reached the weather station. Here, Otis was able to contact the Ether spaceship. When he was about to explain the situation on Earth, the signal was cut off again. It wasn't that Sally didn't want to communicate, but the spaceship had encountered a meteor because they didn't have accurate guidance. They had mistakenly entered a restricted area of space. The meteors kept coming, causing the Ether spaceship to sustain some damage. Other problems could be fixed by intelligent machines. But the communication system had been severely damaged and needed to be repaired by humans. Time was of the essence, and the mission was important. Sally led two crew members to the repair site, the vast and turbulent universe, the incomparable sight of the stars shining. The three-person team finished the job while admiring the view, but as they were about to return, the second wave of meteors attacked again. They hid on the side of the spaceship, avoiding direct attacks, but this wave of meteors came and went quickly, causing no damage to the spaceship, thinking that they would be safe. It wasn't until they escaped the meteor shower that one of the crew members discovered that they had been injured. The wound was very horrifying, piercing straight through because of the space suit. The blood didn't flow out of the body for the time being. The other crew members immediately rushed to help, but the wound was too severe. Once the cabin was depressurized, the blood began to flow freely. The crew member passed away, and everyone was devastated, but they knew they had to finish their mission. Sally couldn't reach Otis, but fortunately, the spaceship was on course. Just before they reached Earth, the captain of the Ether spaceship, Sally's husband, received a video from the satellite. The blue planet was no more. It had been replaced by a thick yellow haze, as if the ozone layer had been destroyed. Everyone realized at that moment that they might never be able to return to Earth. The signal was restored shortly after, and Otis, who was on duty at his desk, heard their voices. He didn't say anything, but he apologized profusely to everyone. "I'm so sorry, I didn't take care of this planet." He even tried to stop the astronauts from returning. He didn't want the last hope of humanity to be lost. The astronauts were also debating whether to return to Earth or go back to the K-3 satellite. They had been working tirelessly for 4 years, never giving up hope and always thinking about their loved ones. One of the elderly astronauts broke down in tears when he saw a video from his loved ones at the shelter. He was determined to return to Earth, no matter what. This elderly astronaut had sworn to himself that he would do anything to keep his loved ones safe. Now that they were in danger, he felt it was his duty to do whatever it took to protect them. The captain was touched by the astronaut's determination and agreed to his request. As the astronaut was packing his things, another crew member approached Otis and said that he wanted to go back to Earth with him. The Ether spaceship was drawing closer and closer to Earth. After hugging their teammates goodbye, the two astronauts began their journey home. The captain and Sally didn't return to Earth because they had more important work to do. Before leaving, they had a final conversation with Otis to see if K-23 was the plan he had suggested. The truth was indeed so. K-23 was not only stunning, but also a planet that offered hope. The two were moved. Sally mentioned her mother, who had been Otis's partner, but when Otis heard her name, he broke down in tears. It turned out that Sally was his daughter. The old man who had dedicated his life to his work finally got a happy ending in the last moments of his life. Although he still couldn't make up for the past for his family, Sally would understand everything Otis had done when she grew up. The two fathers and daughters didn't acknowledge each other, but they continued to carry on their spirit of sacrifice for the greater good. Finally, the Ether spaceship was launched back to the K-23 satellite to rebuild civilization.